Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by the South Carolina Farm Bureau, online at scfb.org.
Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by the South Carolina Farm Bureau, online at scfb.org, and by Time Warner Cable, online at timewarnercable.com.
And welcome back to This Week in the State House as we begin to look at issues that are coming up in this session of the General Assembly. Last week we had a Senate perspective. Today we're going to get a House perspective on what are the issues, maybe what you want to come up isn't going to come up, things are going to happen maybe that you have no idea are going to happen. But first, before I introduce our guest, of course I want to thank Time Warner Cable and the Farm Bureau for making this broadcast possible, and ETV for the production of it, and of course we thank the South Carolina Press Association for their assistance in putting this broadcast together. Before I introduce y'all, I've got to say something to we got a loyal audience there at 518 of the Block Building, and I'm sure that Representative Stavronakis and Representative Merrill are taking notes, so remember that as you answer questions today, to give them a little bit of time to. But with that, we've got two guests who are very experienced in the legislature. Representative Todd Rutherford, you're the minority leader.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right next to him is Representative Bruce Bannister. You're the majority leader. Sir. And you're from the Columbia area. Mm-hmm. He's from the Greenville area. I'll start with you. All right. What issues do you see as the hot issues in the House of Representatives this year?
I'll start with the big two, and the big two that the governor mentioned last night, and those are infrastructure and our roads and education. Going to infrastructure, the governor, in my opinion, has her head in the sand, and she believes that all the new money that we get, if it's $100 million, $150 million, that'll go towards the over $1 billion need that we have right now to fix our roads. Her plan is the HOPE plan. And as I was reminded yesterday, HOPE is not a business plan. The General Assembly is ready and willing and able to sit down, take a look at all the issues that are in front of us, and figure out how we need to fund fixing our roads. But we are handicapped by a governor that tells us she's going to veto any increase in gas tax. That's not the solution, and I'm not saying that that's what everybody's for, but we need to make sure that all avenues are on the table, not being handicapped by taking gas tax off the table. The second is education. The governor came out with a seemingly ambitious education program last night, about $170 million in funding. The problem is she never said where she's going to get the new money from. Is she going to take it from higher ed? Is she going to take it from roads? Where is she going to get that $170 million to fund the things that she said were important last night? If she's not going to do it with new money, new taxes, then it's simply a shell game. She's going to take from those programs that have already been cut, that already have needs, that have already shown some level of the fact that they work. She's going to take money from them and move them to her new program. She's got broad level of support for those programs, but we've got to figure out how we're going to fund it.
Representative Bannister, you see the same issues as he does. I know you don't agree with everything he said, so.
No, I think Todd's right on the issues. Education is going to be a big issue. We're very excited the governor has taken a leadership role in reforming education. We're excited about some of the things she proposed last night, including the additional funding and focusing that funding on the kids that are at risk, the kids who are currently not being served as well as they could be. So I think that's a good first step. I think that's a positive way for us to move forward on education. Where the money comes from, I know she's been talking to Brian White and Kenny Bingham about the budget and what new money is coming in, what additional revenue we'll have in the budget, and how some of that can be allocated to her plans in education. Infrastructure is an interesting issue. The governor laid out very clearly what the parameters are. If she's going to veto the gas tax, then we need to know that up front, because as we look for solutions and we look for ways to properly take care of what is a very big asset in South Carolina, we need to know what she'll support and what she won't. I mean, she is the governor, and that's her prerogative. So as we look at it, like we did last year, we put the equivalent of a 3.5 cent gas tax increase into infrastructure without raising taxes. We'll look for the same kind of funding this year, either be it one-time money or streams of revenue we can direct to the Department of Transportation to take care of those. So I think those will be the two big issues. I think we're going to spend a lot of time on those. And I think the governor of the state gave us some pretty clear direction.
You know, the problem is, even if you look at what we did last year, about $50 million in funds going towards roads, you divide that over 46 counties, and then you take that $50 million divided by 46 counties, you come up with enough money in each county to pave about 2 miles of roads. That's not enough. Our problems are much greater than that. So I agree with Bruce. It's good that we have some leadership. It's just not coming from the governor's office. I applaud the Senate and the House and the majority. They've talked about what we need to do to get things moving. But again, if she would stop saying she's going to veto one of the things that we need, possibly, in order to fix our roads, we can move forward. But until then, we can't.
Well, would you both agree that if she's going to veto a gas tax, that there's no way to override that veto? It takes the gas tax off the table.
I would agree. There would not be the votes to override a veto on the gas tax.
Right.
Now, let me going back to infrastructure, because I hear about it across the state. Based on the studies that I've seen, we've got $27 billion of unfunded needs in this state. $27 billion. If you take everything we are applying to roads, the thing I hear from people is complaints the interstates are clogging up. They don't just need resurfacing, they need additional lanes to them. The state is slowly, I call it gliding to gridlock, is we need new roads. We need, where can we find that money if we don't have a gas tax? Do y'all have any idea where that kind of money may come from?
The governor's plan is hope, and she just hopes it appears someday. And there's no way that's going to occur. You don't run a house, you don't run a business on that type of plan. We've got to figure out a direct funding source. And without a gas tax, I don't know how you do it. And with a polling numbers show that 60% of South Carolinians support a gas tax. So why do we have our head in the sand about this?
Well, are y'all looking at things like maybe some fee increases that go to the highway department or something? Is any of that in the mix, or is this coming off of, y'all know, I mean, I'm just kind of interested in is where it's going to come from.
Several things that we're looking at similar to what we did last year. We're looking at the remainder of the sales tax on cars being directed to the DOT. And while it was $50 million last year, we took that $50 million and were able to bond it into $1 billion worth of road work. The DOT guys have said, look, if you gave us $27 billion today, we couldn't handle it. We can't deploy that much money that fast. It's going to take time. And so the $27 billion is more of what we need over the next 10 years. And so each year, if we find a way to put $1 billion into the roads and infrastructure, if the gas tax is off the table, which it is, then it's our job to find where we get that revenue.
I don't know where you find it, and that's the problem. And it's, you know, if you're running a business and you know that your roof is collapsing and you've got to fix it, you allocate the funds to do so. You don't just keep hoping and have the governor keep pushing the ball down the road, hoping that it doesn't happen under her tenure. It's happening right now. Yes, nobody has died because a bridge has collapsed, but how long is that off? And whose fault will that be? It'll be the governor's fault, because she's not willing to come to the table and tell them, if you're not going to have a gas tax, then this is how you fix the problem. If she's taking something off the table, she needs to put something back on, and that hadn't happened.
Well, let me ask you both about taxes. For some reference to the income tax, taking the top bracket. Do y'all see any comprehensive tax reform passing through both of the houses of the General Assembly?
Why is everybody laughing? I don't see a comprehensive tax reform package passing the House and Senate before the end of this session. But it's a conversation we have to start. We have to start putting forward proposals. We have to start looking at the way our tax system is set up. The governor's point is this. Based on how we are currently operating, we're one of the fastest growing economies in the Southeast. South Carolina is winning that race to attract new business and grow the economy. If you're doing that and businesses want to be here, you don't raise taxes on them. You get more businesses here because that raises the revenue. You don't have to charge a higher rate. You've got to get more taxpayers. So the more people who have jobs, the more jobs that come, the more businesses that want to be here, because this is a great place to do business, the more revenue you have. And when you say, where do you find the money? If you're a small business and the roof is collapsing, you don't raise the cost of your goods to your customers. You don't say, hey, I've got to double the price of all the toilet paper because I got a leak in my roof. You have to find creative ways to stop the leak, fix it, and sell more toilet paper. So what we're doing in South Carolina is trying to grow the economy, get more jobs here, and hopefully that results in the additional revenue that we need.
The problem is we haven't raised the price of toilet paper in so long that the roof is now caving in, and that's the problem. That bathroom that he's talking about, the toilet is stopped up, it's overflowing, and we keep pretending that next year we're all of a sudden going to come up with a solution, and we're not. As it relates to a comprehensive tax reform bill, I don't know that it's going to see the light of day this year. It will be interesting to talk about, but as Bruce said, when you got all this growth coming in that the governor claimed is coming, if it's coming in, leave things the way that they are. I don't hear complaints from my constituents. I don't hear complaints from business owners about the Department of Revenue and how much they pay them. I hear complaints about the Department of Revenue using whatever device they have to go after businesses and shut them down, and that the governor can control and has refused to. Regulations in this state, be they by DOR, DHEC, or anybody else, are choking business. And we heard that yesterday at the chamber event, we heard it at the BIPEC event, and the governor continues to refuse to do anything about it. She appointed a panel last year. They've been talking about it and thinking about it, but she has refused to do anything about regulations that continue to choke business, and bureaucrats in some of these agencies that decide on their own what the law is going to be, send it up here, we don't respond, and so then it becomes a law and businesses have to deal with it. She continues to do nothing about it. Eric Bedingfield has a bill that I think will see broad-based sponsorship to change all that. But she has done nothing. She didn't even mention it last night.
Well, let me ask you about regulations, because I have an interest in that from the Office on Aging, because one of the things that we see out there is we have regulators who I'll term, they worship at the altar of the rule rather than the result. For instance, in a facility that gives good care, they're in the medicine cabinet seeing if the lady's hairspray is a toxic substance under their regs. Now, you start taking the ladies' hairsprays, you're going to have an unhappy crowd, so to speak, there at the home. What we find is that the regulations are going in effect without the General Assembly voting on it. What do you all think of the idea of requiring regulations to have an affirmative vote by the General Assembly before they go in effect in South Carolina?
I think it's a great idea. I support it. I think that's what we need to do. I don't know if you were a co-sponsor. Several years ago, we introduced a bill to change the time frame to be legislative days instead of calendar days. So basically, it could never become law without a vote. And we're going to try any way that we can to make the General Assembly look at those regulations and determine whether or not that's really what we intended, and not just let the agencies have sort of a blank check to do whatever they want to.
With bipartisan support, we'll do that. I mean, that is just the most ridiculous thing ever. So.
Well, I know y'all passed a bill, for instance, to require people who give home care to have both workers' comp and also have a background check. Page-and-a-half bill. DHEC comes over here with 27 pages of regulations from a page-and-a-half bill.
Right.
And it just seems to me the processes, and then you get a hold of these. I mean, I could take you to the Alzheimer's unit where they wanted them to put a sign up that tells the patients how to get out, essentially, how to open the locked doors. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on. Let me also ask you about on TV, and I know the audience is seeing these commercials about, what is it, one of the islands, Staten Island or somewhere, the trash coming here to South Carolina. And I noticed that it's about a House bill that's now in the Senate. Can y'all perhaps tell our viewers, what is that issue really about?
Thanks, Todd. The bill in the House that came through was a response to an Horry County ordinance that basically was designed to put some private entities that had been licensed, made large investments in Horry County, out of business. And by fiat, the government there wanted to keep those businesses from being able to compete and operate in just a free market system. The bill as it left here, while it would have fixed the Horry County issue, created a host of other issues for other municipalities, some of which were legit. The Three Rivers site where all the counties coordinated with each other to do ordinances to use that as their site for waste. All those ordinances would have then, by this bill, would have been against the law and null. So they engaged in the Senate. The ad campaign is absolutely very effective, but not really, it's very misleading. If you do what the counties want to do and let those ordinances stand, then those private entities will have to go to New York and New Jersey, and they'll have to go to Staten Island to get that trash to stay in business. So that you'd actually increase the flow of trash from out of state, because those private entities that have invested millions of dollars in landfills would then have no business on the local side to put South Carolinians' trash there. They'd have to go outside the state. So it's a wonderfully misleading ad campaign, but very effective. I've heard from the senators that that's dead in the Senate. One thing that we will do, and I think this is not a partisan issue, if a private entity gets a permit and is licensed by the state and invests millions of dollars to do business here, we're not going to let a local government, by ordinance, put them out of business. On the other hand, we are going to continue to monitor what's going on in the landfill world and try to do the best we can to keep. It's not an open field to dump trash in South Carolina. We're going to do what we can to keep that from happening. But the bill, as it was passed the House, is dead in the Senate.
I agree with everything he said. And we've talked about this on Twitter.
I'm glad we got you all together on something here.
Right.
I'm going to need a copy of this tape.
He sees it my way.
Well, let me switch topics and ask you ethics. I know the House has acted on the ethics bill. The Senate has started taking it up yesterday. What are the issues here? Why is there such a compelling need at this hour for an ethics bill from y'all's perspective?
I was watching ESPN the other day, and they talked about Barry Bonds starting to lose votes for the Hall of Fame. And I started to call him, if I knew him, and suggest that he start a campaign to deal with performance-enhancing drugs and changing baseball as it relates to performance-enhancing drugs and doping and all those things, so he can do what Governor Haley has done, which is violate the ethics laws of this state and then come in and tell us we need to change the laws to stop people from doing exactly what she did in the past. I continue to say my constituents do not call about ethics laws. They believe they elect somebody to be honest and open with them. They expect that, and every 2 years the House members come up for re-election, and we have the chance to either prove that we are or not. Ethics laws in South Carolina are something that the press is driving to say, oh, we need this, because the governor has told us if we don't change the laws, people are going to continue to do wrong. We know what's right, we know what's wrong, and you know it from being in the playground. Ethics laws are not going to stop people from doing what the governor did when she did it. They would simply make her disclose where her income came from. It wouldn't tell her to stop getting that job. Income disclosure, she stated, was everywhere except 4 states, and those are her numbers, not mine, everywhere except 4 states. Income disclosure is going to prove nothing, because all you have to do if you're intent on doing what she did is shade who that income comes from by sending it to an LLC and then to you, or send it offshore, or send it back. There's so many ways to do it. We need to simply do what's right. The bulk of us do. I'm sorry that she did not, but that does not mean the General Assembly needs to change ethics laws to fix the loophole that she created.
So I would disagree with that.
We got things back to normal now.
The issue is about public trust, and for whatever reason or however it comes to the point that the public needs to have more confidence in their elected officials, then we have a duty as House members and senators to address that. If they believe they're not getting the disclosure they need to make competent decisions at election time, then we need to give them the information they need. So income disclosure, if that's what the voters need to make a proper decision on who represents them, then I'm in favor of that and want to help make that happen. Why is it a big issue now? It just is. Government and people's trust in government has always been shaky. For the guy who doesn't have enough parking places at his business, or who gets a business license and finds out he can't do the business that he wants to, or a local ordinance that puts you out of business. All those things create a mistrust. The solution is disclosure. Is let the voters decide what's right and wrong, but make sure they have the information. So I think the ethics debate should be about making sure folks disclose where their conflicts might be, where their interests lie, so that voters can make the decision and elect who they want representing them.
So basically, y'all are talking about, in the ethics bill, that it's a question of disclosure.
Well, the ethics bill is a lot bigger than that, and there's
Right.
all kinds of moving parts. But I think if you boil it down to the essentials, disclosure is the root of letting the voters decide what their guy is doing. Is it right or is it wrong? And if it's out in the public and he's disclosed what he's doing and you think it's wrong, you can vote against him. And if you think what she's doing is right, you can vote for her.
Disclosing income is not the same thing as disclosing a conflict. If you have a conflict, you should not vote on a particular bill. That's in the law already. The fact that she did not disclose that she had a conflict does not mean we now need to say, well, now you got to tell where your income sources are. That doesn't fix anything. And the public did not say, we need to know where you make your money. They need to know that you have a conflict on a bill, and if you have one, ethically, you should disclose that and refrain from voting on that bill. And failure to do so is against the law. It's already against the law. We don't need income disclosure. We don't need sources of income disclosure. That's not going to fix anything.
Well, let me ask both of you, too. The issue has come up, a constitutional issue. Each branch of government is separate and independent. Each branch, in civil areas, is the judge of the qualifications of its members and the discipline of its members. Now there's an attempt to take the investigations in the legislative branch and have them either done by the executive branch or some new commission. Do both of you see some constitutional issues there in separation of powers?
Absolutely. It is inherently unconstitutional for one agency to police another. And I can't think of another large-scale agency that does not police itself. Police agencies out there have internal affairs departments to police themselves. Every single agency, any kind of employment agency, from small business on up, has an agency within itself, whether it's the boss or supervisor, that polices itself. The House and the Senate should do the same thing. If someone has violated the law, just like has happened before, that violation is then sent to the Attorney General's office to prosecute it criminally. If not, it is handled in-house, as it is done routinely. And that is the way that it is done in other states. That's the way it's done throughout South Carolina. That's the way it should be done in the House and the Senate.
Representative, you comment?
So I would agree that there are constitutional issues. I would point to when criminal things happen, the solicitor is entitled to charge whether you're a member of the legislative branch or the judiciary. If you're breaking the law, you're going to end up in that law enforcement side. The executive branch is going to prosecute you. I understand that. What you're talking about is, can they come in and investigate an ethics allegation?
Exactly.
Did you have a conflict of interest on a bill? And I think that is the part that needs to remain in the branch of government where it's located. I don't think you need an outside group determining whether or not there was a conflict or not a conflict on a particular vote, and whether or not you violated some ethics duty that you have. That's something that each branch should do, because if you get away from that, you get too much interference between the branches.
And somebody made the observation on the Senate floor yesterday, it was an interesting one, that if the legislature could be investigated by this super commission, then why can't the judges? Because they have in the judicial branch their own.
And for those that want that, they need to remember that the executive branch is in control of SLED in this state, and SLED investigates public corruption cases along with the Attorney General's office. So if it is egregious enough to reach the level of a criminal violation, there already is an outside agency which investigates us.
How about the certificate of need controversy? The money got vetoed, sustained, there's no money, the statute's still on the books. Do y'all see that issue coming up in this session of this General Assembly?
Why are you looking at me?
Because I don't control the docket. If I did, yes, it would. Hospitals need to know what they can spend money on, what they need, and not just hospitals, but all those people involved in healthcare. The reason why we have the certificate of need process is so that if they invest $12 million in some piece of equipment, they need to know that somebody's not going to open up next door, get that same piece of equipment for $8 million so that they can't recoup that investment and then put them out of business eventually. Hospitals that take level 1 trauma patients can't compete with somebody on the outside, right outside their door, that can operate, that can take all the private pay patients away from them, and they still have to treat all the Medicaid and Medicare patients. So we need the certificate of need process. I don't know why she vetoed it in the first place, but we've seen how her veto has now caused pandemonium outside in the world of healthcare. It needs to be fixed.
You think the issue may come up?
So I think the issue will come up. I think we will deal with the CON. The only thing whether you like the CON or you don't. The only thing worse is not knowing. So all those entities that are out there that don't know whether or not at some point they should have gotten a CON, or they're trying to get one and now they're held up, the worst thing we can do is not address it.
We got just about 3 minutes left in the broadcast, so I want to go to one other subject she touched on, and I know the two of you are not going to agree on this. The question of Medicaid. Is that issue going to come up again as to whether to take it or not take it, or you think that question is settled for now?
I think, unfortunately, that the majority is not going to let the issue come up. Under the Haley health care plan, again, the Haley Hope health care plan, she hopes that it doesn't get any worse than it is, but we continue to spend more money on it. We turned our backs on $11 billion in money, $44,000 in new jobs. We've got seniors and other people out there that are hurting that need access to health care, and we are simply hoping that it does not get any worse and it continues to do so. But I don't think it's going to come up because I don't think they'll let it.
Representative?
We are not going to expand Medicaid. We're not going down that path. It's unsustainable. We don't believe that the plan as it is put forth by the Obama administration is going to be beneficial. We can't afford it. The promises that they're making about long-term support for the program aren't realistic. Some of the plans that have come out already show them cutting back on that funding. The places where Medicaid has expanded, the states are seeing a rise in health care costs. Instead of better care, they're just seeing more expensive care. And so we're not going down that path, and certainly not this year.
I was on a flight coming back with Governor Jan Brewer of Arizona, and we talked about how she had expanded Medicaid. And I said, what led you to do that? And she said one thing: leadership. It's about leadership. We've got people in our state that are hurting. They need health care, and that's why I did it. And I make no bones about it. It's about leadership. She's exactly right. We need to do that in this state as well.
Well, we got about 1 minute left of the broadcast. So I'd ask you, is there a subject that each of you want to touch on very quickly that I didn't ask you about today? I'd love to talk with you about aging, but that's going to be another program.
Go ahead, Todd.
Well, no, I agree. I think that aging, and I'm sorry that we didn't get to that. I think I've told you before, my wife is a nurse, and she actually does wound and ostomy care. And the stories that she comes home with every day, I mean, it's depressing to know how we are treating our seniors and how we are treating people out there that need health care. They need it so bad, they're not getting it. And when they go to these hospitals, a lot of them are getting turned away because they don't have health care, they don't have health insurance. They're being told that they can't be treated that day. The problems that we have in this state that we need real money to address that we don't have time for. I'm sorry.
Real quick, while it won't make headlines, we're going to do a lot of stuff to help small businesses keep doing the incubators and the things that we can do from a regulatory standpoint to help them and increase the number of small businesses in South Carolina.
And with that, we're out of time. I want to thank both of you. We'll be back next week with a new issue as we look at what goes on here in the State House.
Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by Time Warner Cable, online at timewarnercable.com, and by the South Carolina Farm Bureau, online at scfb.org.